The red scarf in the storm made Adrian forget the woman wearing his ring. The Bentley's cabin smelled of polished leather, cedar cologne, and the white lilies Vanessa had ordered for Christmas lunch. Beyond the tinted glass, Manhattan blurred beneath silver afternoon light. Tires hissed over salted pavement, while muted carols drifted from the speakers, almost buried beneath Vanessa's voice. "The Whitmores are already seated," she said, checking the diamond watch at her wrist. "If we're late, they'll assume the negotiations are in trouble." Adrian glanced toward her phone, where a photograph of the restaurant glowed. Gilded ceilings, crystal glasses, a private table set for 12. Then a flash of red cut through the gray outside. His hand tightened around the leather armrest. Under the narrow roof of a bus shelter stood a woman with snow gathering on her dark coat. She had turned her back to the wind, using her own body to shield a little girl pressed against her side. The child's boots were wet to the ankles. Each passing car sent a brown fan of slush toward the curb, and the shelter's cracked glass shuddered whenever a truck thundered by. But Adrian saw only the scarf. Red wool, frayed tassels, one corner repaired with darker thread. He had bought it 8 winters earlier from a tiny holiday market near Bryant Park, back when expensive gifts had embarrassed Clara and she still warmed her hands around paper cups of coffee. She had laughed when he wrapped it around her neck twice. "Now I look like a Christmas package." "Stop the car." The driver's eyes lifted to the rearview mirror. "Sir, stop." Vanessa looked up sharply. "Adrian, we're already 7 minutes behind schedule." The Bentley moved past the shelter. Clara's face appeared for one clean second between streaks of melting snow on the window. Paler than he remembered, older around the eyes, unmistakable. "Pull over," Adrian said. The driver braked beside the curb, and the car's rear end shifted slightly on the ice before settling. A horn blared behind them. Vanessa's lilies trembled in their silver wrapping. "What are you doing?" she asked. Adrian did not answer. He watched Clara bend to straighten the little girl's knitted hat. Her gloves were soaked. She rubbed the child's arms briskly, then checked the road as if willing the bus to appear through the white haze. The girl leaned into her, small enough that the crown of her hat barely reached Clara's shoulder. Vanessa followed his gaze. The soft gold light inside the Bentley sharpened across her cheekbones. "You know that woman." "Not a question." Adrian opened the door. Wind rushed into the warm cabin, scattering the scent of lilies and carrying in diesel fumes, wet wool, and the metallic bite of snow. Vanessa caught his sleeve. "Our families are waiting. The photographers are waiting. You cannot walk into a snowstorm because you recognize someone from your past." His eyes dropped to her hand, then returned to the shelter. The little girl looked toward the Bentley. Clara followed her gaze. For a breath, everything seemed to mute. The horns, the carols, even Vanessa's jeweled fingers tightening around his sleeve. Clara did not wave. She did not smile. She simply held Adrian's stare while snow melted against the red scarf between them. He eased his arm from Vanessa's grip and stepped onto the slushy street, leaving the door open behind him. Cold soaked through his coat before his shoes reached the curb. Clara drew the girl closer. Her chin lifted by half an inch, the old gesture he remembered from every moment she had refused to be diminished. "Clara." His voice came out rough beneath the traffic. Her hand closed over the child's shoulder. "Adrian." Behind him, Vanessa remained inside the Bentley, framed by cream leather and warm amber light. Ahead of him stood the woman he had once promised never to abandon, and beside her, a little girl staring at him with eyes he'd seen every morning in his own mirror. Then something slipped from the child's mitten and landed face down in the snow. Adrian bent toward it. Clara moved at the same instant. "Don't," she said. "Don't touch it." Clara's warning cut through the hiss of tires on wet pavement. The little card lay half buried in gray slush, its green yarn border darkening as snow soaked into the paper. Adrian's gloved fingers reached it first. He lifted it carefully, and a silver star, fixed to the front with too much glue, shivered in the wind. Inside the Bentley, Vanessa lowered the window. Warm air carrying cedar perfume spilled briefly into the metallic cold. "Adrian, we're already late." No one answered her. Sophie pressed against Clara's coat, breathing through parted lips as snow gathered on her knitted hat. "I made it myself," she said, watching the card in Adrian's hand. 3 uneven letters crossed the front in red crayon. For Dad. The traffic lights painted the wet street crimson, then green, but Adrian remained at the curb. His thumb rested beside a crooked drawing of 3 figures beneath a Christmas tree. One wore a red scarf. One was small enough to fit beneath the branches. The third had been left without a face. "Who is this for?" His voice was barely louder than the idling engine. Clara stepped forward and held out her hand. "Give it back. Mom said maybe someday I could." Clara closed her fingers around Sophie's mitten. Not hard, just quickly enough to stop the rest. The little girl looked up, and beneath the snow-bright sky, Adrian saw the detailed distance had blurred before, a pale amber ring around each dark pupil, the same rare coloring his mother used to call winter fire. Sophie blinked when the wind struck her face. Adrian did, too. His gaze dropped to the card again. Along the bottom, beneath a row of purple snowflakes, a teacher had written Sophie Bennett, age 6, followed by her date of birth. The numbers seemed ordinary. Then his mind moved backward 9 months, past the divorce hearing with its polished table and untouched water glasses, past the morning Clara had removed her wedding ring and placed it beside his coffee, back to their final night beneath the rain-streaked windows of the house they had already agreed to sell, when grief had made them reach for each other after every promise between them was broken. Adrian's hand tightened. The damp paper bent beneath his thumb. She was born in September. Clara's face gave him nothing, but her breath stopped whitening the air for one long second. That isn't a question. 6 years ago, the horn of a delivery truck blared behind a Bentley. Its driver shouted through a cracked window, yet the sound reached Adrian as if through several feet of water. Sophie began rubbing her mitten beneath her nose. Clara took another step, placing herself between them. The card. Adrian looked over her shoulder at the child, then back at the date. "Is she mine?" Vanessa's door opened behind him. A narrow heel touched the slush, followed by the sharp click of another. What exactly is going on? Clara did not glance toward her. She seized the card from Adrian's hand and tucked it inside Sophie's coat, beneath the zipper where the snow could no longer reach it. The gesture answered nothing and protected everything. "You don't get to ask a child that question at a bus stop," she said. "Not after 6 years. Then tell me I'm wrong." Snow melted along Adrian's collar and slipped cold beneath his shirt. Clara wound the red scarf once more around Sophie's neck, covering the little girl's trembling chin. "The number 14 bus will be here in 7 minutes. Clara, your fiancé is waiting. Tell me I'm wrong." This time, Clara met his eyes. The city moved around them in exhaust, bells, and white breath. She neither confirmed nor denied what the date and Sophie's eyes had already placed between them. "Move away from my daughter," she said, "unless you're prepared to learn what your absence cost her." A gust knifed beneath the bus shelter, rattling its glass panels and driving powdered snow across Sophie's boots. The little girl's mittened fingers tightened around Clara's coat, and a dry cough shook her narrow shoulders. Adrian glanced toward the Bentley, its amber lights glowing through the storm. "Get in the car," he said. "Both of you." Clara's expression hardened. No, behind him, Vanessa stood beside the open rear door, one hand shielding her face from the snow. "Adrian, our families are waiting. The photographers are already at the restaurant. They can wait." He took one step toward Sophie, then stopped when Clara shifted between them. The boundary was silent but unmistakable. "The bus is late," Adrian said. "It's 18 degrees, and she's shaking. We've managed without your car for 6 years." A horn blared from the traffic trapped behind the Bentley. Its tires hissed over gray slush. Exhaust mingled with the roasted chestnut smoke drifting from a nearby cart. Adrian looked at Sophie again. Melted snow jeweled her eyelashes, but her cheeks had lost their winter pink. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he said. "I'm asking you to let me get her out of the cold." And I said no. Clara crouched and pressed 2 fingers beneath Sophie's chin. "Sweetheart, look at me." Sophie lifted her face slowly. Her lips parted on another cough, and when Clara touched her forehead, the composure in her eyes cracked. She pulled off one glove and tried again with her bare palm. Sophie leaned into the touch, listless now, her breath too warm against the freezing air. "Mommy," she whispered, "everything feels spinny." Clara's hand moved to the child's neck. Adrian watched her thumb pause over the racing pulse. This time, he did not reach for Sophie. He turned toward the Bentley driver. "Call the nearest children's hospital. Tell them we're coming." The driver already had his phone out. "Yes, sir. No calls to my office. No security detail. Just the hospital." Vanessa stared at him across the snow-covered curb. "You cannot abandon Christmas lunch over a stranger's fever." The word stranger settled between them like black ice. Adrian opened the rear passenger door himself, releasing a breath of heated leather and cedar-scented air. Then he stepped away from it. He did not order Clara again. He waited. Clara gathered Sophie into her arms and rose, the red scarf brushing the child's damp cheek. For one long second, she looked past Adrian at the cream leather seats, the crystal water bottles, and a life that had once closed its doors on her. Then Sophie shivered so violently that her teeth clicked. "Hospital," Clara said. "Straight there." Adrian nodded. "Straight there. You sit beside her. You sit in front." "All right." You do not question her. You do not call anyone. And you do not mistake this for permission to enter our lives. Her gaze held his while snow collected in her hair. "This is transportation, Adrian. Nothing more. I understand." "No," Clara said, carrying Sophie toward the open door. "You don't, but you will." She climbed inside and wrapped a wool blanket around her daughter. Adrian closed the door gently, then took the front passenger seat, leaving Vanessa alone beside the curb. The engagement lunch disappeared behind them as the Bentley pulled into traffic. In the back seat, Sophie murmured through chattering teeth, "Mommy, will they need my medical file?" Clara's eyes lifted to Adrian's reflection in the rearview mirror. Her arm tightened around Sophie. "Yes," she said quietly, "and once they open it, there will be questions neither of us can avoid." Fluorescent light washed the pediatric examination room in a colorless glow, while warm air hissed through a ceiling vent and melted the snow along Clara's coat hem. Sophie lay beneath a paper-thin blanket, cheeks flushed, one small hand curled around the red scarf. Adrian remained beside the closed door until a nurse rolled in a computer card. "Her temperature is 102.1, the nurse said. "The doctor believes it's a respiratory infection aggravated by prolonged cold exposure. We're treating the fever now." Clara smoothed the damp hair from Sophie's forehead. "Thank you." The nurse scanned the medical file, then paused. "We also need to verify the emergency genetic record attached to Sophie's chart." Clara's fingers went still. Adrian looked from a screen to her face. The nurse turned the monitor slightly. "A court-certified prenatal paternity test is listed here. The father is Adrian." The soft tapping of sleet against the window suddenly seemed louder than the medical equipment. Adrian crossed the room, but Clara rose and placed herself between him and the bed. 6 years, he said, his voice stripped nearly bare. "You knew. I knew before she was born. Why didn't you tell me?" Clara reached into her weathered canvas bag and removed a narrow folder, its corners softened by years of handling. She laid it on the stainless steel counter. 6 envelopes rested inside, each addressed to Adrian in her handwriting. Every one had been stamped "Returned to sender." "I wrote when I found out," she said. Then again after the test, after she was born, on her first birthday, when she asked why other children had fathers at school concerts. Adrian picked up the oldest envelope. The paper crackled beneath his thumb, dry and fragile, carrying the faint cedar scent of long storage. Across the back, beneath the return stamp, was the embossed seal of his family office. The nurse quietly pulled the curtain around Sophie's bed and stepped out. Clara opened the final envelope and removed a copied routing slip. At the bottom sat an authorization in black ink. "Block all personal correspondence from Clara." The signature belonged to Adrian's late father. Beneath it, a typed justification named the merger Adrian's family had been negotiating during the divorce. Any pregnancy claim, The memo warned could destabilize the alliance and jeopardize billions in financing. Adrian stared at the date. It was 3 days after Clara's first letter arrived. His father had congratulated him on the merger that same evening over 12-year scotch and crystal glasses. "My office did this," Adrian said. "Your family did," Clara replied. "And you built a life where no one could reach you without permission." He opened the prenatal report. The probability of paternity read 99.99%. No ambiguity. No rumor. Just his name beside Sophie's, fixed there for 6 years while he signed acquisitions and appeared on magazine covers. Behind the curtain, Sophie coughed, and Clara moved instantly to her bedside. Adrian stayed at the counter, gripping the rejected letters as the edges pressed white lines into his palm. Money could restore a hospital bill, a home, a future. It cannot buy back 6 Christmas mornings. When Clara returned, he placed the documents down with deliberate care. "Tell me what she needs." Her gaze settled on the gold watch at his wrist, then on the silent phone filled with missed calls from the lunch he had abandoned. "First," Clara said, "you decide whether you want to help Sophie or protect Adrian." The soft hiss of oxygen slipped beneath the curtain, mingling with the sharp scent of antiseptic and the faint cinnamon drifting from a paper cup at the nurse's station. Snow tapped against the dark window. Adrian unlocked his phone and set it beside the 6 returned letters. "A house near the best school," he said. "A trust in Sophie's name. Medical coverage, transportation, security, whatever you need." Clara remained beside the narrow hospital bed, smoothing the edge of Sophie's heated blanket with 2 fingers. The monitor cast a pale green rhythm across her face. "And legal protection," Adrian continued, his voice tightening as the list grew. "No one will be able to threaten your custody or use this against you. I can have everything arranged tonight." Clara turned. Her coat was still damp at the shoulders, and melting snow had darkened the worn leather of her boots. "You heard that your daughter exists," she said quietly, "and your first instinct was to build a wall around the problem. That isn't what I'm doing, isn't it?" She crossed to the counter and pushed his phone back toward him. On its screen, unanswered calls stacked beneath the names of attorneys, executives, and family office directors. A house can be photographed. A trust can be announced. Security can keep people far enough away that you never have to learn what cereal she eats. Adrian's hand stopped above the phone. Behind them, Sophie shifted and murmured through her fever, one small fist closing around the corner of the blanket. Clara lowered her voice. "She is not an acquisition you can stabilize. I'm trying to provide for her. Then start by not turning her into a crisis your staff has to contain." The words landed without volume. Clara opened her canvas bag, removed a creased pharmacy receipt, and placed it over the paternity report. "I have a home. I pay her bills. I know which cough means she needs water and which one means we go to the emergency room. I'm not surrendering that life because you suddenly discovered it." Adrian looked through the curtain gap at Sophie's flushed cheeks, then unclasped the gold watch Clara had noticed earlier. He laid it beside the phone, face down. "Tell me what fatherhood looks like to you." For the first time, Clara's fingers went still. The radiator clicked beneath the window. Somewhere in the corridor, a child laughed at a Christmas cartoon, bright and brief against the muted hospital sounds. Clara pulled a chair closer to Sophie's bed, making the decision before she spoke. "Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. Adrian waited. "Come to our apartment alone," she said. "No Bentley at the entrance. No driver carrying gifts. No security in the hallway. No photographers. No statement from your office. You bring nothing expensive enough to make her feel she owes you." "What do I bring?" "Breakfast, if you can manage it. She likes blueberry pancakes, but she picks out the berries." A fragile, unfamiliar smile touched his mouth and disappeared. Clara's gaze did not soften. "You get one morning. You sit on the floor if she asks. You answer only what she asks. And if she wants you to leave, you leave." Adrian slid the phone into his coat without calling anyone. "I'll be there. Don't promise me." Clara tucked the blanket beneath Sophie's chin. "Promises made in hospital rooms are easy. Show up when there's no audience." The door opened, releasing a ribbon of colder air as a nurse entered to check Sophie's temperature. Adrian stepped aside, no longer occupying the center of the room. Clara wrote an address on the back of the pharmacy receipt and held it out. He accepted it with both hands. At the bottom, beneath the apartment number, she added 3 words, 8. Come alone. By sunrise, Adrian would have to decide whether he could arrive without the machinery that had protected him from every consequence, and whether the people waiting outside this room would allow him to try. Beyond the pediatric ward's glass doors, camera shutters snapped like sleet against a window. Adrian had barely stepped into the white-lit corridor when Vanessa rose from a leather bench, her ivory coat immaculate, the scent of winter roses cutting through antiseptic air. 2 attorneys stood behind her with tablets glowing blue in their hands. Tell me the child is not yours, she said. Adrian folded Clara's pharmacy receipt once and slipped it into the inner pocket of his coat. Sophie is my daughter. Vanessa's diamond ring flashed as her hand tightened around her phone. Then call her a private family matter. We proceed with lunch, announce the wedding, and let counsel handle the woman. Through the narrow window in Sophie's door, Clara sat beside the hospital bed, smoothing the child's damp hair while the nurse adjusted a clear 4-line. Adrian did not look away. Her name is Clara, and no one handles her. Vanessa stepped closer, lowering her voice until it became sharper than the fluorescent hum. Their engagement was not merely a wedding. Her family's investment group controlled the financing required for Adrian's multibillion-dollar merger. An assigned alliance would be presented to shareholders after Christmas. Publicly acknowledging Sophie, Vanessa warned, would turn the family office's concealment into a scandal and place the entire deal at risk. If you claim that child, she said, the wedding is over. My father withdraws the financing before the market opens. Your board will lose billions by breakfast. A vibration traveled through Adrian's pocket. Then another. On the nearest attorney's tablet, pre-market indicators began pulsing red as rumors moved between trading desks. The machinery had already awakened. Vanessa extended her hand, palm upward. Come with me now. We can still contain this. Adrian studied the engagement ring on his finger, the cold platinum band selected in a private showroom, approved by 2 families, photographed beneath champagne light. Inside the room behind him, Sophie coughed, a small ragged sound followed by Clara whispering for her to breathe slowly. He pulled the ring free. Vanessa's hand remained open for one suspended second before Adrian placed it in her palm. The diamond struck her wedding band with a clean metallic click. Cancel the announcement, he said. Withdraw from the merger if that is your choice. But Sophie will not spend another day hidden to protect my stock price. Vanessa's face held still, but the tendons in her wrist sharpened around the ring. One attorney immediately turned away and began making calls. The other watched numbers fall across his screen. 2%, 4, then 7. Red reflected faintly across the polished floor, trembling beneath Adrian's shoes like an alarm no one could silence. You are destroying everything your father built, Vanessa said. Adrian opened the hospital room door, releasing warm air scented with children's cough syrup and blueberry sanitizer. No, he replied. I'm ending what he protected. Clara looked up when he entered. Her eyes moved first to his bare hand, then to the corridor where Vanessa stood beneath the hard white lights. Adrian did not ask for gratitude. He took out his phone, declined 3 calls from the board chairman, and switched it off. 8 o'clock, he said, touching the folded address through his coat. I'll come alone. Behind him, Vanessa's heels receded across the tile while the market alerts continued chiming from the attorney's tablets. By dawn, the vanished engagement ring would be public. The merger would be collapsing, and Clara and Sophie would no longer be a secret powerful people could afford to ignore. What Adrian had not yet learned was who would make them pay for being seen. Blue light from Clara's phone washed across the hospital blanket, while snow tapped softly against the dark window. One alert became 12, then 50. By 7 that morning, Vanessa's version of the truth had crossed the city. Confidential hospital records, Sophie's date of birth, and an anonymous claim that Adrian's ex-wife had fabricated a paternity scandal to extort a billionaire during a collapsing merger. Clara's thumb stopped above a photograph of herself at the bus stop, the red scarf bright against the snow. Beneath it, strangers had already named her a gold digger. Across the room, Sophie slept beneath a pale blue blanket, her four-pump clicking beside the paper Christmas tree taped to the wall. Adrian stood near the window with his phone pressed to his ear. Take down every story showing Sophie's face. His voice was low, stripped of boardroom polish. Not Clara's name, the child's face. Clara opened the canvas tote beneath her chair. They won't stop because you ask politely. 6 envelopes rested inside, their corners softened by years of handling. Each carried Adrian's name in her handwriting. Each bore the same red mark, returned to sender. Adrian lowered his phone as she arranged them across the windowsill. Your attorneys will call these evidence, Clara said. Your publicists will call them leverage. I call them every birthday she spent asking why her father never wrote back. The hospital door opened, letting in the sharp smell of coffee and cold wool. A reporter's request had reached the nurse's station. Another waited downstairs. Adrian moved toward the door, but Clara stepped between him and the corridor. No, yesterday you made your choice. Today I make mine. She photographed the envelopes one by one, including the routing slip stamped by his family office and the late father's order to block all correspondence from Clara until the merger closed. Then she opened 6 years of bank statements. No transfers from Adrian. No settlement. No trust payments. Nothing except rent, groceries, pediatric bills, and Clara's wages arriving in careful, ordinary deposits. Her fingers trembled once. She pressed them flat against the cold glass and began recording. My name is Clara. Sophie is not a negotiation, and she has never been for sale. The room held only the soft hiss of the heater and Sophie's measured breathing. Clara displayed the returned letters, then the financial records. She did not insult Vanessa. She did not defend her clothes, her apartment, or the life strangers had mocked before breakfast. I asked one man to read 6 letters, she said. His family made sure he never did. I asked no one for money. She uploaded everything before Adrian's lawyers could arrive. By noon, the accusation began collapsing under its own cruelty. News anchors placed Vanessa's leaked medical file beside Clara's unopened envelopes. Commentators stopped asking how much Clara wanted and began asking who had stolen 6 years from a child. Outside, camera shutters rattled beneath the hospital awning, but the signs in the growing crowd no longer condemned Clara. One read, she sent the letters. Another, let Sophie be 6. Adrian watched the city turn, not toward him, but toward the woman who had survived without his fortune. Then his phone lit with a message from the board chairman. Emergency meeting. 1 hour. Clara locked her screen and looked at him across the quiet bed. They couldn't erase us, she said. Now we'll see whether they can make you blame us. The hospital clock clicked forward, and Adrian reached for his coat. This time, the entire city would hear his answer. Camera shutters snapped beyond the smoke glass doors, sharp as sleet against steel. Inside the 42nd floor boardroom, heat hummed beneath a black marble table, while untouched coffee cooled in porcelain cups. Adrian entered without an attorney, an assistant, or the engagement ring that had once announced the merger before any contract was signed. 12 directors watched him take the empty chair at the head of the table. The chairman slid a prepared statement across the polished surface. Sign this, and the company will confirm that Clara concealed Sophie's existence while seeking financial leverage. The paper smelled of fresh toner. Adrian read the first paragraph, then pushed it back with one finger. Clara sent the letters. My family office buried them. I benefited from that silence, whether I knew about it or not. A director near the window removed his glasses. Another warned that lenders were already calling, institutional investors were selling, and thousands of employees could pay for a private scandal. Adrian's phone vibrated against the table. Another demand from Crisis Counsel. Another red market alert. He turned a face down, then stopped calling it private. The chairman's jaw tightened. We can protect the company, Adrian, but not if you insist on protecting her. Adrian rose. Leather creaked around the table. You are not protecting the company. You are asking a 6-year-old to absorb the cost of decisions made by powerful adults. He placed his access card beside the unsigned statement. The small piece of black metal landed with a clean, final click. Effective immediately, I resign as chief executive officer. Silence swallowed the ventilation hum. The chairman stared at the card as if it were a weapon. If you walk out now, you lose the vote, the office, and any authority to control what happens next. That is why I'm doing it now. Minutes later, white television lights burned across Adrian's face in the lobby. Reporters crowded behind velvet ropes, their coats damp with melted snow, microphones rising like a dark thicket. He stepped to the podium alone. No corporate seal stood behind him. No publicist adjusted his words. Clara did not deceive me, pursue my money, or conceal my daughter, he said. She tried to reach me. The system carrying my name stopped her, and I lived comfortably inside the result. Questions erupted, but Adrian continued. He accepted responsibility for the company's attempt to turn Clara into a shield, announced his resignation, and asked the press to keep Sophie's photograph, school, and address out of their coverage. Then he opened a slim folder. His remaining executive compensation and a substantial block of personal assets would endow an independent fund for single mothers facing medical, housing, and legal emergencies. It would not bear his name. He would hold no board seat, no veto, and no control over its grants. An independent council, composed of social workers, family law advocates, pediatric clinicians, and mothers who had navigated those systems, would govern it. This is not forgiveness purchased in installments, Adrian said, and it does not give me a claim on Clara. The room stilled at her name. I will not ask her to return to me. I will ask only for the chance to become accountable to my daughter, on the terms her mother set. By the time he stepped away, his resignation had crossed every financial ticker in the city. His old office belonged to the board now. The fund belonged to women he could not command. Outside, snow settled cold against his bare hand as he silenced the Bentley driver's call. 8 o'clock was approaching, and for the first time in his adult life, Adrian had no title, no motorcade, and no institution capable of opening Clara's door for him. Christmas morning smelled of cinnamon, radiator heat, and fresh snow. At exactly 8, 3 quiet knocks crossed Clara's apartment, without a doorbell camera flashing or an engine idling at the curb. Adrian stood on the landing in a charcoal wool coat, snow melting into his uncovered hair. No driver waited behind him. No assistant carried gifts. In his bare hands sat a slightly crushed bakery box tied with plain twine. Clara opened the door only as far as the chain allowed. Her red scarf, the one he had recognized beneath the bus shelter, rested around her shoulders. For a long moment, she studied the empty hallway behind him. Then she unhooked the chain. You came alone. That was the invitation. She stepped aside, but did not touch him. Inside, colored paper stars hung crookedly above a small tree. Butter hissed in a skillet. An old Christmas song crackled from the radio, and Sophie sat at the kitchen table in flannel pajamas, drawing 3 figures beneath a green crayon roof. Her fever had broken. When she saw Adrian, her pencil stopped. He lowered himself until they were eye level, resisting the instinct to close the distance for her. Merry Christmas, Sophie. She glanced at Clara. Clara gave one small nod. Not permission to forgive, only permission to choose. Sophie slid the handmade card across the table. The words "for Dad" were smudged where snow had touched them. Adrian accepted it with both hands. I made it before I knew if you were real, she said. His thumb paused beside the uneven lettering. I should have been real to you much sooner. No defense followed. No mention of intercepted letters, lost years, or the empire he had surrendered. Sophie reached into a paper bag and handed him a lopsided gingerbread man with one sugar eye. This one could be yours. Then it's the best thing I own. Clara turned back to the stove before the corners of her mouth could betray her. At noon, sunlight poured pale gold across the linoleum. The bakery box remained unopened because Sophie preferred grilled cheese cut into stars, tomato soup, and marshmallows floating in cocoa. Adrian sat at the little table where one chair wobbled, his expensive coat folded over the radiator and his sleeves rolled past his wrists. His phone vibrated once inside the pocket. Clara's gaze moved toward it. Without checking the screen, he switched it off and placed it face down in a kitchen drawer. This time, the silence belonged to them. After lunch, Sophie brought him her red winter boots. The hill has good snow. Adrian looked to Clara, but she was already wrapping the red scarf around Sophie's neck. The choice came from her now. You can take her to the park, Clara said. I'll come too. Outside, the city glittered under clean white light. Reporters had not found them. No black Bentley cut through the slush. Adrian pulled Sophie's wooden sled by its frayed rope while Clara walked beside them, close enough for their sleeves to brush once, then separate. At the hilltop, Sophie placed one mitten in each of their hands. Neither adult tightened their grip too quickly. Are we a family now? She asked. Clara crouched and zipped the child's coat to her chin. We're learning how to be one. Adrian met Clara's eyes over Sophie's red hat. At your pace, he said. At hers, Clara corrected. He nodded. Below them, church bells rolled across the snowy blocks. Sophie ran toward the slope, pulling both of them after her, and Clara did not release Adrian's hand. Not as a promise of the marriage they had lost, but as permission to build something honest from what remained. Adrian had once chosen a Christmas lunch arranged by wealth. Now Clara chose the table, Sophie chose the man, and he finally understood that love was not the door his power could open. It was the door he had to deserve being invited through.